If you were interested in more than one hobby, what would you do? Hi, Wildcats. Want to watch a movie? So today we're going to take a little bit of a nostalgia road trip and look at the Disney Channel original movie, High School Musical. Released in 2006, this movie perfectly captures what life was like during the 2006 housing crisis. We were all questioning our lives and where we were going to end up, and along with us on that journey came Troy Bolton. So we open on what looks like the most epic party of the season. So many super neat and very cool teenagers all hanging out in one place, but we can't seem to find our protagonists in this party. As we move outside of the party, we see a young Vanessa Hudgens sitting reading a book. If only that book could tell her what her future had in store.
Yeah, people are gonna die.
Since she's not like other girls, of course she would be reading because parties are so lame. But her mom wants her to socialize and get out there, so she takes away her comfort item, her book. Anyway, shifting away from Gabriella, we now meet Troy. He's, of course, playing basketball with his basketball dad. Now, I have never stayed in one of these fancy winter lodges with a holiday party before, but I don't think they have basketball hoops in them. I'm thinking of every single hotel I've ever been in, and I've never once seen a basketball hoop there, so I'm not entirely sure if that's just a life experience I haven't had yet. Anyway, Troy's mom comes in, and she has a very similar interaction to the one we just witnessed. Something that I think is interesting in both Gabriella's mom trying to get her to go to the party and Troy's mom trying to get him to go to the party is neither Troy or Gabriella put up much of a fight. It clearly seems like they did not want anything to do with this party, but their parents are like, you have to go to this party. I don't really want to. I think you should. Okay, and that's kind of it. Now that the protagonists have been begged and pleaded with to go to this holiday party, we're in, we're back, and might I say, everyone at this party definitely looks like they are a teenager and not like they're 30 years old and have a mortgage. I know your body changes during puberty, but that much? As the previous couple finishes up their song, our matchmaking DJ looks for his next victims. Gabriella has found her book again. And so she's just gonna tuck herself away right by the stage and read her book. Meanwhile, Troy walks in, very lost and confused, and somehow, by pure coincidence, and this is not at all set up, the spotlight lands on those two, and they have been selected by the DJ. And you cannot say no to the DJ. I'm not sure why, in this scene, Troy decides that after he sings his first verse, he's just going to leave the stage before Gabriella has even opened her mouth. But of course, once she does, it's now time for him to fall in love. She's got the voice of an angel. Something that caught my eye while watching this and activated the little theater designer inside my brain was, why are the TVs showing the party? I don't understand who made that decision. Are the guests supposed to watch the TV and be like, oh, that person looks so dope, I'm gonna go hang out with them now? That doesn't make any sense. And after this perfectly executed meet cute, Troy and Gabriella decide, whoa, you're pretty neat, let's swap numbers. And they do. Then Troy starts kind of talking and Gabriella leaves in the middle of the conversation. I know they both were like, oh, we gotta go find our parents now. The fireworks are going off. However, Troy was still talking. I don't know why they're leaving in the middle of a sentence, but sure. It's our first day back to school. Everyone at this school worships the ground that Troy walks on. He is simply the raddest dude on campus. In the span of 40 seconds, we have these things established. 1, Chad wears 3 watches, which I don't know if that was the style at the time, but he'll never be late. 2, Sharpay was apparently the original Elsa, so that's good to know. And 3, Taylor thinks that the basketball team is a tribe. All in all, this is a very educational montage. Also, off topic, East High School looked so cool when I was a kid. I was convinced that my high school was going to look exactly like it. I was so excited. This school has incredible facilities. It has like a fully fleshed out science lab. They have an auto shop there, and their locker room is as expansive and confusing as the back rooms. At my high school, we had a theater where wherever it rained, it would leak onto our stage. We had nice vintage stained carpet that had stains dating back to probably when the school opened, and the bathroom sinks and toilets would leak, so not very East High of them. We start to move into Mrs. Darbus's class, and we are once again greeted with our cast of characters, and I, at this point, did not know if this was like a theater class or if this was homeroom, so I didn't understand why in a school where cliques are everything, people were all in a theater class together. Like, my school didn't offer any theater classes until I was a senior, but the people in that class were theater people, so I'm going to assume that it's homeroom. Anyway, we see Troy tell this fascinating story about pink jelly.
All I remember is like pink jelly.
And then we see Gabriella.
Hi, Troy.
And then we see Sharpay. This scene also gives off Breakfast Club energy, where you see these are 6 heroes of this story, our main cast, and they all get detention immediately. Within the span of at most 45 seconds, Mrs. Darbus has taken away 4 phones, reprimanded Chad and Taylor, and talked about the school musical. But the bell rings, and that's it for our first class at East High. But now that stinky class is over, Troy and Gabriella can finally talk, and they have this very epic conversation that's pretty much just like, dude, I didn't know you went to this school too. I don't know when we saw the previous interaction that was maybe 6 or 7 minutes long. Not once did school come up. Never once did you ask about school. So guys, come on. You were never going to know. In this conversation, we find out that Troy is a closeted theater kid, and they reach the sign-up sheet for auditions. Troy tells Gabriella that he is a closeted theater kid, and while he wants no part in the musical, she should absolutely audition. Why not? And you see this sign-up sheet that looks fairly...
That's impossible, Troy.
Is every entrance going to be a jump scare from Sharpay? Like, why does Sharpay keep appearing? She's a specter. You only have to say her name, and then she appears, jump scaring you. During this conversation, Sharpay asks if they're interested in auditioning, because there's so many supporting roles that they could have, and that's a little funny. Gabriella then bounces approximately 20 seconds into interacting with Sharpay, leaving him all on his own. In this conversation with Sharpay, however, we then get some insight into the timeline of this movie, which makes no sense. These kids were just on winter break. They just got back from winter break, and in 2 weeks, they have their biggest game of the season. Why did they plan the season like this? This makes no sense. I played basketball in middle school. Fun fact, it was entirely motivated because of this movie. We never had a game that was immediately after a break. That doesn't make any sense. And maybe it's because I played middle school basketball. However, that doesn't add up. Troy tries to soft launch to Chad that he maybe is going to audition for the musical. And Troy tries a lot of different ways. He says it's for extra credit. And you always need extra credit. And then he's like, oh, it would be a really good bit though. Chad is not supportive of Troy, however. It's funny how they then had a song and dance to convince Troy he needs to stick with basketball, to get his head in the game, so to speak. All the basketball boys are running around telling Troy how important it is that he always needs to be present in the game, which makes sense. You might get a basketball flying at your head or an elbow in the face. It happens. But Troy gets a little too lost in the music, lost in the sauce. He then gives a Shakespearean-esque soliloquy where he's like, oh, I love music and sports. I can't decide what I want to do. But of course, he quickly ends this because he's got to keep up his image for his basketball boys. Sharpay, curious about the new girl and not in a way to get to know her, decides to interrogate her about her relationship with Troy because Troy has never shown anyone an ounce of sympathy, of help, anything like that. He's notorious for being a basketball boy. Before Sharpay can find out too much information, though, Gabriella realizes her teacher's so stupid and corrects her in front of the entire class. Something that is very entertaining to me is Ryan and Sharpay's entire motivation for learning everything they can about Gabriella is that Troy and Gabriella mildly expressed interest in the musical. This has ignited this duo to be on a warpath to take them down. Ryan catches Troy once again looking at the audition sheet because Troy is not subtle, and he thinks, why basketball boy audition for musical? And Sharpay has really found out nothing about Gabriella, but has enough knowledge allegedly to decide to research everything about her. So this dynamic duo goes down to the computer lab, which, if you remember computer labs, congrats, you get a retirement home discount. After finding an article about Gabriella being smart and getting an award for being smart, Sharpay decides everyone needs to know about this. And she prints off the website because the message of this movie is stay in your lane. Never in my life have I seen a detention where the teacher running detention makes the kids do work. Every single detention that I've been in, only one of them, has been you sit in silence and think about what you've done, and you think about how you are a bad person. Yet these kids are just building set pieces and costumes and painting props, and I don't understand why they're working.
Upon watching this clip again, I noticed that Ryan is in fact painting a ladder, so I'm sure that is very productive for detention.
Taylor spots Gabriella from across the detention room. I guess it's in the theater, and she decides it is time to recruit Gabriella. The Scholastic Decathlon is apparently in a week, which is so exciting, and I love that. But once again, I bring into question the timeline. I feel like that's just way too quick of a turnaround for a smart people team to, do smart people things until they're ready to go to a competition to prove how smart they are. But since Sharpay is a sleeper agent in this movie, she hears Gabriella being hesitant about joining the Scholastic Decathlon team and decides she needs to butt in and tell Gabriella to do it. Suddenly, from across the school, Troy's dad realizes something's off. His son isn't at basketball practice. Troy's dad, the coach of the basketball team, did not realize his own son was not at the basketball practice. While Darbus is monologuing about the evils of cell phones and how they should never be in the theater, Troy's dad storms in and delivers one of my favorite lines in this entire movie.
What the heck are those two doing in a tree?
I also love the dynamic of Darbus and Coach Bolton. They have so much back and forth in this movie, and you can tell it's been going on long before this movie even happened, where they are so frustrated with each other because it seems like there's so much overlap in their scheduling, which once again begs the question, why is the timeline the way it is? Back in basketball practice, Coach Bolton connects to a divine entity to tell him, you need to do a monologue that is thematically important to the story that we are watching. And he does. He tells the team about how the basketball game, this big, huge game, should be the only thing on their minds. You're in high school. I feel like you gotta pass classes and get to college and those things. In this scene, though, you see why Chad should be the team captain. He's clearly the most passionate about the team, is great at rallying the guys, and he, in every single scene where they are not at practice, he has a basketball. Clearly, basketball is the only thing on this guy's mind. But of course, nepotism baby Troy gets to be the team captain. On the green, Taylor once again is pleading with Gabriella to get her to join the Scholastic Decathlon team. Gabriella deflects by talking about Troy, and then Taylor shows off one of the neatest skills I have ever seen. She knows how to speak cheerleader.
Oh my gosh! Isn't Troy Bolton just the hottie super bum?
The only way Coach Bolton can talk to his son is through basketball. That is the only way their relationship has thrived. Poor Troy can never get a break from basketball. I can only imagine how much this wears on him, that his dad's pressure and reputation just is weighing on him the entire movie. He tries to tell his dad, hey, maybe I want to do something that's not basketball. And his dad immediately shuts him down. Very epic sports dad moment. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, and Darbus does confirm that this is a homeroom and not a class. It's as though she heard me through the movie and was like, Kieran, don't worry. This is not a classroom. Something they have at this school that confused me was a free period. I don't know about you all, but I don't see the benefit in giving teenagers free reign of the school, especially when their school has a auto shop. Can we talk about why there's an auto shop in this school? Chad tells Troy that during free period, the basketball team is going to get together and practice plays in the gym, which seems like the decision a team captain would make. Troy says he's got homework and can't make it. They've been back in school for 2 days. Through a series of very, very sneaky, stealthy maneuvers, Troy dive and dodges his way into the auditorium to be there for the auditions. And because you are always psychically linked with your soulmate, him and Gabriella both meet each other inside of the auditorium and they watch some auditions. The biggest benefit of this scene is seeing Sharpay and Ryan perform. I know they are supposed to be the villains, but they are born entertainers. Using my almost fully developed adult brain, I can understand where Sharpay and Ryan are coming from when Troy and Gabriella start to get interest in the show. They're teenagers who have worked incredibly hard to get to where they are in the theater, and when that's being threatened, they get scared and try and lash out and take them down so that they don't have that threat anymore. We watch Sharpay and Ryan give this very, very fun, bubbly, peppy rendition of the audition song, and it's a lot of fun. They are entertainers. It's what they do. Kelsey, who is a lesbian, says to Sharpay and Ryan, hey, that's not the way that the song is supposed to be interpreted. But I don't think that's a fair comment to make. Firstly, Kelsey is not the director. She's the composer, and she can have a say in how the music's supposed to sound. But something I've learned in my theater experience is if you're not the director, your 2 cents on acting does not matter. And second, I believe that once an artist's work can be consumed by the public, you can no longer put your own definition on it. It can be interpreted in 1,000 different ways because that's how it impacts the individual consuming it. And since we're never really privy to what the musical is even about, who's to say that Sharpay and Ryan's version of it is wrong? Darbus gives her last call for auditions, and of course, in Disney Channel fashion, the protagonists wait until the very, very last second to come forward and be like, I want to do something, please. I think in this scene, Darbus is kind of harsh to these teenagers where she's immediately like, oh, in the theater, attendance is so important. Since when? Since when? Actors are so bad about being on time to anything. No, it's not. It's not a thing. I know in theater you're supposed to be on time to things. Whether or not that happens, though, is another story. Like, I know in this school, people are not supposed to have interests outside of their clique. They're supposed to stay in their lane and do their little thing. But you could at least stay a couple extra minutes and listen. Side note, this is one of the nicest theaters I have ever seen in a high school. Like, what is their budget? Who is putting the money behind this? Troy proves to the audience that he is a very nice guy and helps Kelsey stand up after she trips over the piano bench. As Troy is expressing genuine interest in her music, or at least perceived genuine interest, Kelsey shows them how the duet is supposed to sound, and Troy and Gabriella give their rendition. And oh my god, I don't like this song. Listen, I know it's controversial, but I think out of all the songs in this movie, Troy and Gabriella's version of this song is not that good. It is not. It's so Darbus, of course, has learned a lesson from Sharpay and decides to give a little jump scare and tells Troy and Gabriella that they got an audition. Sharpay has a very normal and natural response to finding out that Troy and Gabriella have a callback. As Sharpay and Ryan are having this freak out in the hallway, the basketball boys are here and they are here to dunk on those theater kids. But before they can make fun of them too much, they see that their god Troy Bolton has a callback. Troy's callback has now inspired a revolution inside of the school. People left and right are saying, what if I want to be something more than my stereotype? They have these huge secrets that they're keeping inside. Like one basketball guy likes to bake. That's so silly. He played basketball. This scene is so much fun to watch. I think the choreography is really fun. And again, it's one of those moments of, I wish my high school looked like this. This entire scene is someone going, hey, I think I want to try something else. And everyone in the cafeteria responding with, no! Which is the only appropriate response. Isn't the point of friendship stopping them from expressing themselves and living out dreams and hobbies that they have? Anyway, as we're going through this scene, Gabriella is very overwhelmed by everything that's happening. And I would be too. If I just joined a new school and I got flash mobbed at my first lunch, I would drop out. Because of all the chaos in this scene, Gabriella gets lost. She can no longer have peripheral vision. She can't see ahead of her. It's a little spooky. And so what does she do? She slips on some milk and her chili fries go flying into the air. And because the universe hates Sharpay Evans, they land right on her chest, covering her in chili fries. After getting the seed planted in her head by a teenager that Troy maybe isn't actually interested in the musical, Darbus goes to confront Coach Bolton. But of course, Coach Bolton is hiding in the locker room in his office because he knows basketball and that's where the basketball boys belong. As she's walking through the locker room, we get so many half-naked, allegedly teenage boys all standing around. The only reason I want to bring up this scene is purely because the musical title made me laugh. The title is Twinkletown Musicale, and there's something funny about that to me. After receiving a very suspicious note in her locker, Gabriella goes to the roof of the high school where there's a greenhouse. Because why not? This is the most well-funded high school I have ever seen. Where is the money coming from? Troy reveals in a very heart-to-heart conversation that since he's the coach's son, there's so much pressure on him to succeed and to get the validation of his peers, but he likes music, and that's not acceptable in this school. He's been put in this corner where he's the basketball guy, but maybe he doesn't want to be the basketball guy anymore. He can't change now. Jokes aside, I think that this scene is a great scene. I think it shows depth to Troy in a way that we normally don't get in DCOMs, where he's talking about genuine insecurities and fears that he has about telling people that he's interested in doing the musical and he wants to be in it. Gabriella also makes a great point about how sometimes it's nice when you go to a new school because you can just be a version of yourself that you couldn't be at your old school. Then they say this.
When I was singing with you, I just felt like a girl.
You even looked like one, too.
I think this conversation shows the audience why Troy and Gabriella work so well together. There's this version of themselves that they've been hiding away from the world because they feel like they have to, and they're sort of bonding over that fear of being themselves. Once they're in agreement that they're, of course, going to be doing the callbacks, we get a sneaky montage. Troy and Gabriella somehow narrowly dodge so many people who are preying on their downfall in this montage. Side note, it baffles me that Sharpay did not see Gabriella. When you spin around and see someone standing in a corner, I don't know about you, but I would be a little concerned. I would raise questions. During this montage, you find out that the basketball boy Troy has been skipping practice, and no one's allowed to do that. Troy's living this double life between singing and basketball unsuccessfully, and it's stretching him way too thin. Once Troy runs in at the end of basketball practice to join the club, Coach Bolton is pissed. He leaves Troy to practice by himself because as a team leader, he owes that at least to his team. His words, not mine. Of course, Gabriella comes in because she has a sixth sense for wherever Troy is. It's like echolocation. And Coach Bolton comes back in and catches Troy and Gabriella just horsing around, and Troy's not taking basketball seriously anymore. This leads to a classic trope in particularly Disney movies where the parent and child start fighting. I had all these expectations and hopes for you. Maybe I don't want those hopes. Maybe I just want to be my own person. Troy says that maybe he wants to sing and play basketball, and he storms away. Chad is working his ass to get Troy to not go to callbacks, but he's not successful. So he reaches out to Taylor and is like, we need to make a plan to get Troy and Gabriella to stay where they're supposed to. Because this conversation does not take place in a secure location, Sharpay and Ryan can see Chad and Taylor talking, and they assume it's so that they could get Troy and Gabriella into the musical. So then they hatch a counter-espionage plan. Troy enters the back rooms and is greeted with his basketball boys hosting an intervention for him. Troy tries to tell them, there's other people on this team, not just me. It's okay if I go to callbacks and miss the biggest game of the season. Which I feel like if he was anyone other than their star player and team captain, then you could get away with that excuse. We also have it confirmed in this scene that Coach Bolton projects onto his son, which is great and so healthy, and I can only imagine that that's doing wonders for the relationship. Can we also look at how suspicious they open the laptop and put the little camera on it? Like, I think that if this was something that I was actually going through in real life, I would be able to tell almost immediately, I'm being recorded. This camera feed broadcasts to a laptop that the nerds are showing Gabriella to be like, basketball boy, only care about basketball.
Lunkhead basketball man.
And it's interesting watching this feed because in his monologue, you can kind of tell that he's not really wanting to do basketball. He's just saying things that will get the team off his back. But Gabriella, she takes it so personal. It's devastating for her. And immediately after this heartbreak is revealed, Taylor's like, do you want to join our team?
So Gabriella, we'd love to have you for this classic decathlon.
Which, like, read the room. Now, of course, since it's a Disney movie, we are getting the breakup of the movie. Even though they were never really official and only knew each other for, at most, 4 or 5 days, Gabriella delivers this heart-wrenching song. It is very deep for someone you barely know. She talks about how she thought she found her true love and life is a fairy tale now. You knew him for 4 days. We now see our protagonists are in a funk they just can't get out of. They are without each other, without song. They have to stay in their cliques now. Chad and Taylor then think for just another second on the plan and are like, hey, maybe we shouldn't have done this. And they try to undo their damage. Taylor and Chad work hard to try and convince Troy and Gabriella that this was just a plan and that none of it was real. None of the espionage, the sneakiness, Troy saying that he only loves basketball and the musical doesn't matter and Gabriella doesn't matter. It's very interesting to watch them try so hard to convince them that it was all fake, and Gabriella in particular is very stubborn and not believing. Troy tries to apologize to Gabriella in person by breaking and entering into her home. Which is very cool and normal. With minimal effort, I am convinced that this movie could be edited to be like a horror movie, considering how many times Sharpay jumps out from behind things and Troy does that. Gabriella decides, after he broke into her house, that she should take him back because he sang a little song to her. Troy and Gabriella suddenly have bounced back and are fully invested in their cliques again. It's like a miracle happened. Also, I don't think people realize, but the bit that I do in real life where I check a fake watch, I'm wearing a real watch right now, so this doesn't, But when I check a fake watch, that is because of this scene where Troy leans up against the lockers and checks his watch, and he's not wearing a watch. Troy doesn't need to carry a watch, okay? He has Chad with him always so that Chad can tell him the time. Somehow, these two have miraculously fit callbacks and prepping for that into their schedules. It doesn't seem like it was that hard considering how quickly they were able to do that once they rekindled their love, but okay. Of course, this joy cannot last forever. As I mentioned earlier, Sharpay and Ryan were running their own counter-espionage scheme. This duo walks past a practice room where Troy and Gabriella are singing their audition song and are like, uh-oh, they're actually good. The genius plan that then comes out of this is they go to Darbus and with very little convincing are able to get her to change the date that the callbacks are supposed to be so that it conflicts with both the game and the Scholastic Decathlon. What are they going to do?
Because the person who made this calendar is a genius.
This is not going to stop those ragtag kids from accomplishing their dreams, though. They hatch another plan. I don't understand why Darbus was so quick to move the date. I know she said, oh, if it's for the better of the theater. But is it for the better of the theater to always cast the same two people in every role? They're never growing. They're never being challenged. I think it's better to keep the original date. But I digress. We are in the home stretch. It is the big day this movie has been building to. 3 huge school events, well, 2 huge school events and a decent sized school event are happening. Both Gabriella and Troy are trying to show that this schedule change is not getting under their skin. They are still going to have a good day. And after one of the fastest school days known to man, it is time for 3 events to happen at the same time. Who made this schedule? Coach Bolton has a heart-to-heart with Troy where he realizes, maybe I was a little too hard on my son. I would be lying if I said that I did not cry just a little bit when Coach Bolton said that the only thing that he wants from today is for Troy to have fun. That was sweet, and we're going to move on. At Callbacks, Sharpay and Ryan prove once again why they should be the leads of this play. They are so entertaining, and they gave us Bop to the Top, a great song. This song is, I think, in my top 5 favorite movie songs of all time. It is so good, so funkalicious. I have a great time every time I watch it. We start cutting back and forth between the decathlon, the game, and callbacks so that we can really feel how tense this situation is. Will they be able to make it? Won't they? Who knows? You'll find out soon. At the decathlon, Taylor pulls out a laptop that somehow manages to hack all of the lights and billboard at the basketball game, plunging them into darkness. Chad shoves Troy so that he gets the message that he's supposed to be running to callbacks instead of just standing and being like, oh, the light broke. And then through I'm not sure what powers, Taylor then causes the beaker to boil in the decathlon room. And of course, it is just so stinky. With both the decathlon and the game delayed because of Taylor's genius, Troy and Gabriella are now racing against the clock to get to their callbacks. Kelsey tries to delay Darbus to buy Troy and Gabriella some more time, but the moment Darbus has any pushback, Kelsey runs off. Students start flooding the theater from the decathlon and the game to support Troy and Gabriella on this mission. They will sing. And Darbus at first tries to push back. She's like, well, guys, actors are timely individuals, which is a lie. Darbus tries to make the point of, oh, we can't do this because we don't have a pianist to accompany you both. And then Kelsey reappears and is like, no, I'm actually so fine and ready to go. So Darbus allows them to do the callbacks. Of course, Gabriella has a moment where she sees the sea of people and she's like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. This is the same girl that an hour ago sang in front of a room full of strangers. I also have no idea how many detentions Darbus had to give out so that the backing track could be used for this scene and the backdrop and who programmed the lights and who was the spotlight operator? It doesn't make any sense. Darbus says they cannot do their callback because they don't have an accompanist. But in the song Breaking Free, there are so many instruments in there that are not piano, and you don't see where they're coming from, so you can only assume there is a track somewhere. The song is super fun though, so I don't really have any complaints about this scene. I'm just, from a theatrical perspective, I don't understand where everything comes from. It is very nice to see all of their friends and peers come out to support them. Even Troy's dad makes an appearance. It's this nice little button at the end of the movie, and I think that it was a great note to end on. Did I say end on? Stinky viewer. We have one more song to watch. I know I've said a lot of this movie is great and my favorite, but I think that this last shot is incredible. You have this sweeping shot after the Wildcats end their game and, of course, win, where it is this one shot where all the characters are wrapping up their stories that you've been going along through this movie. You can see how all of their interpersonal relationships connect and wrap up at the end. And I think that it was incredible. And it all ends with we're all in this together. A great song. I memorized the choreography when I was 7. There's a lens of nostalgia that comes into play when watching this movie, where you sort of look at movies from your childhood with rose-colored glasses. So I tried to take off those glasses while watching this movie. Were there things happening behind the scenes of this production that were not great? Yes. Was the writing sometimes a little cheesy, a little over the top, a little dramatic? Of course. But I would make the argument that this movie is very realistic. I mean, yes, it's a Disney Channel movie, so parts of it are going to be exaggerated. The schedule is not something that would happen in real life, and you cannot tell me otherwise. Despite that, though, I truly think that it's important to show kids growing up that it's okay to express different interests than your peers and to break out of this mold that you've been put in. It shows a very real thing that happens to most adults when you pour your heart into this one hobby, into this one identity, and then when you grow up and realize you're not special for that. While I believe that on the surface level, this movie is very much about a conversation surrounding exploring your interests in high school, and you shouldn't have to stick to this one thing, to the status quo, so to speak. People are often so focused on being liked, in high school especially, where they sacrifice parts of their identity to try and be a more people-pleasing person. They hide the parts of themselves that they're scared to show the world, and I think that that's neat that Disney Channel tried to tackle that. Beneath the surface level, I think it's up to interpretation. There were times where I felt there was a conversation around bisexuality or being queer, where you're sort of scared to come out and scared to be in the world because you don't know how the people closest to you will react. You've presented this version of yourself for so long to the world, and you worry about if you change that perception, how are people going to feel? And maybe I'm projecting too much onto this, and maybe I'm looking too deep into a Disney Channel movie, but I think that when you are watching movies, you're supposed to project your experience onto the characters to a degree. Part of the movie-going experience is to see yourself in the characters on screen and to be able to relate and identify with them. Just because it's a Disney movie doesn't mean that you can't connect to those characters in that way. All of this to say, I think that this was a good time, and I think that High School Musical still holds up today. It's fun. It's silly, it's got a good message, good heart, there's great moments in between the characters, and I felt good while watching it. I believe that any movie can be a good movie. It just depends on how you approach it. I think High School Musical still stands up to this day, but I'd love to know your thoughts and if you agree or if you don't. Why don't you click down below and drop a like or maybe a subscribe, or hey, what about a comment talking about High School Musical? It's a great time. It's a good movie, and I dare you to disagree with me. I'll send a little smooch your way, and I'll see you next time.